What does economic efficiency mean? That's what we'll be looking at in this PowerPoint. And in terms of economic efficiency, we're looking at two types of efficiency, one called productive efficiency, one called allocative efficiency. And just a word of warning, should you decide to answer an IB exam question dealing with economic efficiency, realize that they are looking at you talking about productive and allocative efficiency, not efficiency in general. You'll score very, very low on that question if you don't talk about productive and allocative efficiency. And both types of efficiency we'll see is part of a competitive market economy. So in terms of looking at some assumptions for our model, we're looking at a competitive market. So no one buyer or seller has a lot of market power. So we're not looking at oligopolies or monopolies. We're dealing with many buyers and sellers. So again, no one buyer or seller holding an enormous amount of market power. We're dealing with perfect information, which means everybody knows how much products are being sold for, if one buyer was selling at a higher price, and so on. And lastly, we're dealing with identical goods. We're going to define productive efficiency. We'll define allocative efficiency. We'll recognize the consumer surplus and producer surplus. And these are key terms that will be used over the 2-year term, especially the consumer and producer surplus. We'll interpret economic efficiency as the point where marginal benefit is equal to marginal cost, MB equals MC, remembering that marginal means for one more unit. And in a simple demand and supply side diagram, it means we're operating at the market equilibrium where supply and demand meet. Economic efficiency also broadly means making the best possible use of resources. Economic efficiency consists of productive efficiency, in other words, how to produce, the allocative efficiency of what to produce, and both types of efficiency are achieved in a competitive market economy. Productive or technical efficiency. So those three economic questions, what to produce, how to produce, and for whom to produce, right now we're going to focus on how to produce. And an economy reaches productive efficiency when it produces at its lowest possible cost, or alternatively by producing by use of the fewest possible resources. We'll be revisiting this graph when we look at theory of the firm, a higher level topic, but productive or technical efficiency simply means that on the average total cost curve, you are producing at the very minimum. So at this point, the firm is minimizing its per unit cost. Productive efficiency in the economy as a whole means that it's not possible to produce more of one good without producing less of another good. So if production is using the fewest possible resources, the economy must be producing the maximum it can produce. In other words, a point on its production possibility frontier. We know that if we're producing within the production possibility frontier, such as at point A, we're not using all available resources efficiently. If it's producing on the PPF, it is not possible to produce more of one good without producing less of another good. This illustrates the economic concept of opportunity cost. Competition induces firms to produce at the lowest possible unit cost. Firms producing at higher costs have to charge higher prices in order to cover their costs. And remember, there's perfect information, so people will know if someone is charging higher prices. Consumers would prefer the lower priced sellers, and the higher priced ones would go out of business. Productive or technical efficiency. again, addresses that how to produce. The how to produce question is answered in the best possible way, in the sense that there's no waste of resources. Allocative efficiency, so the what to produce in terms of goods and services. An economy achieves allocative efficiency when it produces the combination of goods that are most desired by society. So if you remember when we first drew the PPF, we were focusing on what we could produce, not what society wanted. Now we're turning over to what is the combination of goods that society would like us to produce at. In other words, and we'll see at what point on the PPF has society decided that that's the optimal combination of those two goods that they would like to see. Allocative efficiency deals with the combination of goods and services produced. If the economy has achieved allocative efficiency, it is not possible to make anyone better off in terms of increasing their benefit from consumption without making someone else worse off, because we are at the optimum for society. So the benefits for consumption are maximized for the whole of society. Allocative efficiency, the what to produce. So out of those three basic economic questions, we're looking at the first one. What is it that we are going to produce? The what to produce question is answered in the best possible way, in the sense that scarce resources are used to best satisfy consumers' unlimited wants. So as I was hinting at before, allocative efficiency is reached when the economy produces at some specific point on its PPF selected by society, because it specifies the combination of goods that society mostly desires. If an economy as a whole is achieving allocative efficiency, it must also be achieving productive efficiency, since both types of efficiency require being on a point on the PPF. Could you have productive efficiency without allocative efficiency? When the economy achieves both productive and allocative efficiency, the society is said to have achieved economic efficiency. So just a little review. The allocative efficiency means at what point on the PPF would we like to choose to operate. So let's say we choose to operate at D. It's also productively efficient because we are producing as efficiently as possible if we're on the PPF. Furthermore, given that society has unlimited needs and wants, we don't really want to be producing at point A. That would not be allocatively efficient, because the economy would want more of the goods and services. And we cannot be producing at point X because we don't have enough resources. So we must be producing at some point that we've chosen along the PPF to be allocatively efficient, and we know that we are also productively efficient if we are on the PPF. A bit more about allocative efficiency. So what do we mean by the benefits from consumption are maximized for the whole of society? Well, we'll take a look at this in just a moment. So we've looked at it by operating on the PPF, where we can consume as much as we possibly can. And we'll look at now the concept of consumer surplus. Consumer surplus. Now you need to know this in terms of a definition. So it's the highest price that consumers are willing to pay for a good minus the price actually paid. And this will make more sense in just a minute. So if we look at this supply and demand diagram, we know that there are consumers who are willing and able to pay higher prices as we moved along the demand curve. But what price did they actually pay? They paid the equilibrium price. So they have an added satisfaction insofar that they were willing and able to pay this higher price, but lo and behold, they paid the equilibrium price. So what is the equilibrium price? It is $10. And the equilibrium quantity is 20 units. And so are there consumers who would be willing and able to pay more than the equilibrium price? Yes, all of those X's that I was showing earlier on. So the consumer surplus, if we looked at what would be the quantity demanded at $15. So at $15, we would move along and come down, and it would be roughly 10 units. And at $17, it'd be roughly maybe 7 units. But what price did they actually have to pay? That was the $10. So again, the consumer surplus is the difference between the price that consumers were willing and able to pay minus the price they actually paid. So the entire consumer surplus is that shaded triangle. The consumer surplus indicates that whereas many consumers were willing to pay a higher price to get the good, they actually received it for less. All the consumers who were willing to pay the higher price to get the good received some benefit or utility, another word is satisfaction, over and above what they actually paid for the good. And this extra benefit is called the consumer surplus. The producer surplus, again, this is very key that you can refer to this definition. It is the price received by firms for selling their good minus the lowest price that they are willing to accept in order to produce the good. And again, it would be much easier to see once we look at this graphically. So the producer surplus. If we look at the equilibrium price again, it is $10. Sorry, excuse me. It's $10. The equilibrium quantity is 20. And are there suppliers, sorry about this, are there suppliers willing to supply for less than the equilibrium price? Well, yes, we can see that all along here, we have suppliers who are willing and able to supply for less than the equilibrium price, but lo and behold, they received the equilibrium price. So what would be the quantity supplied at, shall we say, $5? So at $5, we could see that there would be roughly 10. And at $3, there may be roughly 5 units. And what price did producers actually receive? They received $10. So again, the producer's surplus is going to be the difference between that equilibrium price, the price they received, the $10, minus the price that they were willing to supply at. And so again, that whole shaded triangle is the producer's surplus. Now, if we add together the producer and consumer surplus, it's known as the community surplus. And it's at the point of competitive market equilibrium, the highest price that consumers are willing to pay equals the lowest price that firms are willing to accept. This is where the sum of consumer and producer surplus is maximized, and we have what we call allocative efficiency. This is what we mean by the benefits from consumption are maximized for the whole of society. So if we think about supply, The lowest price firms will accept represents the firm's cost of producing an extra unit of the good, or the marginal cost. So the supply curve can be thought of as a marginal cost curve. So we could say supply equals marginal cost. So reinterpreting the market equilibrium. So in other words, where marginal benefit equals marginal cost. Think about demand. Recall that the demand curve can be thought of as a marginal benefit curve. It follows that the point of market equilibrium is the point where MB equals MC. So if we have this demand equals marginal benefit, and we bring in supply equals marginal cost. Let's move the demand down here. Demand equals marginal benefit. Then at the point of equilibrium, we have marginal cost equals marginal benefit. So producing where MB equals MC, where marginal benefit equals marginal cost, achieves allocative efficiency. So MB equals MC tells us that the extra benefit to society of getting one more unit of good is equal to the extra cost to society of producing one more unit of the good. When MB equals MC, society has allocated the right amount of resources to the production of the good and is producing the quantity of the good that is most desired by society. And we will see that in an activity that we do in class, where we clean up a beach and we look at the extra benefit society receives for each time we add an extra worker to cleaning up the beach, and we'll compare that to the marginal cost, so the extra cost that society incurs by hiring this extra worker. So producing where MB equals MC achieves allocative efficiency. If marginal benefit was greater than marginal cost, society places a greater value on the good than it costs to produce it. More should be produced. As in cleaning up the beach, if you remember, the students told me to keep on cleaning up the beach if they felt that the benefit exceeded the cost to do so. If marginal cost exceeded marginal benefit, the cost of producing the good is higher than the value society places on it, and less should be produced. So once again, when we were cleaning up the beach activity, there was a certain point where students said, no, let's not hire anyone else to continue to clean up the beach, because the cost is now going to exceed the benefit that society is getting from this. It's where marginal cost equals marginal benefit, then the quantity of the good being produced is just right. So an example is air pollution. The example we did in class was cleaning up the beach. No air pollution would be great, but the cost would be extraordinarily high to society if we had absolutely zero air pollution. If the marginal benefit of cleaning up more pollution exceeds the cost, keep cleaning up the environment. If the extra benefit of cleaner air exceeded the cost to clean it up, stop cleaning up the air. Society would like to operate where marginal benefit equals marginal cost. It follows then that when marginal cost equals marginal benefit, which occurs at the point of competitive market equilibrium, so where supply and demand meet, the market is achieving allocative efficiency. So at this point of efficient allocation, we'll say that we have allocative efficiency. And so economic efficiency in the economy as a whole is achieved when allocative efficiency, and therefore productive efficiency, is achieved. MB equals MC in every market. Marginal benefit equals marginal cost in every market. But note, this is not achieved in reality, but governments may intervene in markets to move the economy closer to this situation, and we will look at that in several lessons from now.